So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm 34 years old and 6 feet tall. I say that not as an introduction, but I'm saying it to myself. And I actually set a reminder on my phone every day to tell myself that. I'm 34 and 6 feet tall. Because public speaking is the thing that we fear over death. And I have to wonder why. Raising our voices, sharing our stories out loud in a crowd of potentially really good people is scarier than dying. And it might be related to one thing that we all share in common in the grown-up world. We used to be kids. Kids don't always have a strong voice in decision-making. We're used to referring to adults as people and to kids as kids, and kids are people too. And language is important because it shapes our culture. How many of you, by a show of hands, have said or heard the phrase, "Children are the future"? Okay, so not many of you. I'm just kidding. We're all going to be singing, I believe that children are the future. So, children are the future. When I heard that sentiment as a child, I related it directly to power and money, the two things that I did not possess. Two things that I learned very early would be nice to have, and that I didn't want to wait for. The future seemed like a long time to wait. At 5 or 6 years old, I knew the value of money because money is what you exchanged at the store for candy. I also knew that my neighbors 2 doors down had a lot of plants in their house. And now I'm going to explain how those things are connected in the mind of my 6-year-old self. So I had my friend Maria come over one day, and I told her we were going to pretend to be Girl Scouts, something I always wanted to be and never was. She and I, by the way, were the tallest girls in our grade, coincidentally. So I laid out a plan with Maria. We went to my neighbor's house and knocked on the door. "We're Girl Scouts," I said, when she opened the door, "and we're collecting plants for the homeless shelter." If there was a look of confusion on her face, I don't remember it. But I remember her asking us in, and we waited in the hallway while she left for a few minutes. And when she came back, she handed us a lovely little potted plant. So we thanked her on behalf of the Girl Scouts. And we ran off. And the next stop was at the end of the street, far enough so that the plant lady wouldn't see us. A small house where a little old lady lived, and that's probably all I knew about her. Knock, knock. When this woman answered the door, I said, "We're Girl Scouts, and we're selling plants for the homeless." Sure enough, I didn't tell this story until I was a lot older because I was ashamed. She was willing to buy our plants, and before long we had money for candy. At some point, I must have heard about collections for the homeless without a lot of context about who the homeless are, what that means and how it relates to me, aside from the fact that there's a money exchange that I can benefit from. Kids, and all of us actually, get ideas from the world around them, the world in which they live, every single aspect of it. And I can't tell you exactly where I got the idea to exploit my neighbors for plants and for money. But I can tell you that if we think of our children as the future, then we forget to relate to them today. And we especially forget to relate today to them. And the future is in many ways unpredictable. Every day they are here. Now children are here. And they come up with all sorts of ideas about what it means to be alive, what it means to be human, to be part of this world, and to relate to others or not. I used to take care of a little guy named Charlie, who loves books. And I'm not sure when it happened. He was probably 3 or 4 years old. But eventually, every time I began reading him a story, he would point to the character and say, "Call that guy Charlie." Okay, no problem. I would adjust the character's name in my head, and I'd continue reading the story. But as I'm reading, another character is introduced, and he'd say, "Call that guy Charlie." So you can probably see where this is going. I'd end up reading lines like, "Oh dear," Charlie said to Charlie, who had come home to see how Charlie was doing. And Charlie, the real one, the kid, he just wanted to see himself in these stories. He wanted to be placed in them to experience each character's point of view. I hope that kids today will reject the notion that they are the future, because in that case, where is their relevance now? So let's move to now. Most of our children in this country, about 50 million, are in the compulsory public school system. In that system, nearly 900 students drop out of high school every hour of every school day. That's more than 7,000 students per day and about 1.3 million students per year that drop out of high school. Taxpayers, of course, worry about what that means, or the so-called social burden, in terms of healthcare, welfare, criminal justice, and other costs. And Henry Levin from Columbia University labels these dropouts aged 16 to 24 as opportunity youth. The opportunity here is that there's an incredible amount of money that we could save if people weren't dropping out of high school. Each opportunity youth costs over $700,000, and the aggregate social burden of all of them combined is $4.7 trillion. Holy freaking cannoli, that's a lot of money. I can't even imagine it. Our public school system currently works under the assumption that success it can be measured. In the spirit of measuring then, I'll give you a few more numbers. 68% of prison inmates did not receive a high school diploma. That's most of the people who are incarcerated. 1 in every 10 high school dropouts is incarcerated. In the US, it costs somewhere around $9,000 to $11,000 to educate a child, K through 12. I mean, you all probably know this better than I do. In Vermont, we spend $58,000 per inmate per year. Taking care of our kids tragically ends up being a fight for resources, for dollars. We are all punished for this one. It's not just the high school dropouts. Schools have high expectations of their students, but what are the expectations of our schools? Schools are not prepared for our kids, their stories, and the lives that they carry with them. After my short stint as an unethical entrepreneur at the age of 5, I continued through the public school system in a very white suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, a community that was deliberately white after desegregation began. It's called white flight, and we were a white flight town. As a first-generation American kid, born of a Syrian father and a Spanish mother, that meant that I would reject my cultural ways, the food, language. At home, I was comfortable with these things, but in school, I felt a very real social need to conform. And I did. I was a successful conformist through high school, college, and the first years of my post-undergraduate employment. I didn't learn much in school in terms of content, except for the language of success, and everything else, all the real stuff, was bottled up. So fast forward to when I woke up one day. I literally woke up after falling asleep in a microscope at work. I was a quality engineer. I was specializing in heat treatment of steel torsion bars, which is the little piece that's very important in the seat belt. It helps it stop when you need it to. But I woke up and realized that I wanted to be more engaged in life. Not that metallurgy isn't exciting, but I quit my job on the spot. It was a good job, great boss, great benefits. But then 4 months later, I found myself unable to sleep at night. I had started a season's work with Nature's Classroom. I took about a 90% pay cut to live in a cabin and spend the days exploring the woods with kids, teaching and learning. And I couldn't sleep at night because I was too excited to wake up in the morning. The kids were so alive, they were so invigorated, energized, engaged, and making connections through nature. And I just needed those 8 hours to pass so I could wake up and be with them, because I was alive again too. Eventually I worked as a substitute teacher, not in suburbia where I grew up, but in inner city Cleveland where you could have a job every single day, because the Metropolitan School District is huge. And you get more money if you work in the inner city, because these are the bad kids. Once I was in a 7th grade class whose science teacher left an assignment. Students should read from the textbook and fill out some pages in their workbooks. I should mention that this school welcomes each person with 2 police officers and a metal detector at the front door. One student had just been shoved to the ground and searched by an officer in the hallway right outside the classroom where I was because of rumors that he had a knife. He didn't, it turned out. But this is the environment. And so here's me trying to force a science lesson from a textbook on kids whose lives, backgrounds, and experiences I barely understood. They wouldn't listen. They didn't care. Students would not sit at their desk, and they continued to talk to one another. But I tried repeatedly to get them to sit down anyways. I tried something that all the teachers that I ever hated as a kid did. I yelled. A sound came out of me from the depth of my belly. I could feel my stomach shaking. It was a yell that I didn't even know I had inside of me. Did it get their attention? Hardly. And worse, in my attempts to control a situation, I had lost complete control of myself. So I didn't return to any classroom for a couple of weeks. I thought about what happened and what I could do different. What is my role in that situation? I went from teaching science in the woods, where science is everywhere, to attempting to get these kids to sit down and read an irrelevant science textbook in a school that is guarded by police. On the last day of school that year, I got the usual phone call requesting a substitute, and I decided to give it another shot. I took the job in a 4th grade classroom with a promise to change my approach. The teacher left a list of classwork for the students to complete before the day's end. And I shared the list with the kids, and I told them, you can do these assignments in any order that you want. I'm only here to help if you have questions or need anything, and please spend time on the things that you care about most. As the day went on, kids were scattered about the room. One girl was standing next to her desk and doing a cartwheel every 5 minutes or so. A couple of boys were sitting on the ground together doing puzzles and working. Every kid had his or her own approach. One here, 2 there, in a desk, on the ground, standing up. One assignment was to write a short story, and eventually it came time to share those stories out loud, if the students so wished. The only rule was to listen to their classmates with the understanding that it's not very easy to speak in front of a crowd. They did an excellent job of both listening and braving the vulnerability of sharing a story out loud. It was the end of the day before summer starts, and these students were lining up at the door. One of the students approached me with a question. She said, "Miss Deeby, how did we behave today?" I said, "You were excellent." "We've never been excellent before." "No? Why not?" "Teachers usually come in here and tell us to sit down and shut up. We're kids," she said. "We're supposed to talk." So the bell rang and the kids were off, and I stood there thinking, what on earth are we doing to these kids? And who's going to stop it? Vermont is a place where so much is possible, and that's why I'm here. I'm 34 and I'm 6 feet tall, and I'm not a kid anymore, and neither are you, and we can stop this. Our kids are living real lives that are in many ways disconnected from their school lives. They are bombarded with messages from the media and society, and then left alone to decipher them, especially right now during this election season. Silence is incredibly dangerous. Some kids have known nothing but violence, nothing but hunger, nothing but struggle their entire lives, and we need them to know that they are not alone, that there is power in our shared stories. We need to tell them truthfully that 64 people own more than 50% of the world's wealth. That globally we struggle together and they are not in isolation. We need to tell them that people are not poor because they haven't raised themselves up by the bootstraps. But some of us are born without bootstraps, and it's near impossible to survive that. We can't ignore what's outside our doors anymore. We need to tell them that you don't have to be 34 and 6 feet tall to speak up, so that kids like me don't consider exploitation a successful model for life, so that those 7th graders won't end up in prison, so that all of us, like Charlie, can choose to step into the shoes of others around the world. innately we seek inclusion. We need to include children now in our definition of people, who people are. And as people, we have power. We are supposed to talk. And thank you for listening.